I write these words because the silence has grown too loud to bear. The engine no longer breathes. The Vox is nothing but static. The treads, once alive with motion, are frozen in the ice of this nameless world. I remain alone in the commander's cupola, hands still gripping the targeting controls, as though I might find comfort in their cold familiarity. Around me, the air inside the tank has turned brittle, filled with the metallic tang of old blood and burnt propellant. I know I am dying, but before the cold completes its work, I must record what befell us, how one oath spoken in obedience bound our lives tighter than steel and doomed us to eternal servitude. We were the crew of the Iron Resolve, a Lehman pattern battle tank belonging to the 47th Armored Regiment of the Astra Militarum. That name once carried pride, as though the words alone could shield us from the Emperor's indifference. We were told we were his hammer, his wrath-given form, the embodiment of mankind's unrelenting will to conquer. For 6 years we fought across 4 campaigns, and we never faltered. Our kill tally was scratched into the turret wall by Commander Varian, our leader. 317 confirmed kills, etched into ceramite with a combat knife, dulled by devotion. We were told each death brought light to the Imperium, and we believed it, because belief was easier than thought. Varian had served 23 years. Half his body was machine now, his left arm a crude augmetic that clicked with mechanical rhythm whenever he worked the Vox. His face was a ruin of scar tissue, lips twisted into a permanent snarl that might once have been a smile. Kellen was our driver, a man of few words whose entire world existed between the throttle and the control levers. He had driven through acid storms, over burning fields and across rivers choked with corpses. Then there was Micros, our Vox operator and gunner's mate, a thin man with a voice too calm for the horrors he relayed. He was our lifeline to command, and our tormentor, because every order that came through his headset meant more killing, more dying. Our loader was Prain, the youngest among us, little more than a boy, though the endless hauling of shells had carved muscle into his arms like iron cables. I was the gunner, Tobin. My world existed in the crosshairs, the scope's glass pressed against my brow, the firing stud beneath my finger, the weapon's recoil my only heartbeat. We were not friends. Friendship was a luxury that got men killed, but we were brothers in the only way that mattered. Each of us trusted the others to keep the machine alive, to make it breathe and kill and survive another day. A tank crew is a single organism. If one part fails, all die together. That was the creed we lived by, even before the Commissar came. The oath came later, aboard the transport ship Unyielding Faith as we were ferried from one war zone to the next. None of us knew our destination. That was the Guard's way. You fought where you were told, killed whom you were told, and if you survived, you loaded back aboard and waited for the next name on the next world. The troop decks were suffocating, vast holds converted into barracks, filled with 10,000 men, tanks, and the stink of oil and recycled air. The engine's constant vibration thrummed through the deck plates, like a heartbeat too big for mortal flesh. We kept busy with ritual maintenance, the only form of worship left to us. I cleaned the battle cannon with consecrated oils, whispering the litany of reliable function as I worked. Micros tuned the Vox, adjusting dials that hummed with static prayers. Prain inventoried shells, his lips moving silently, blessing each round before slotting it into the rack. Kellen was somewhere below, checking the tracks with a wrench and a curse. Commander Varian sat above the turret, the ember of a low stick glowing in the dim light. That was when the sound came, measured footsteps on the metal floor, sharp and deliberate, echoing with authority. We all knew that sound. A Commissar, he appeared between the tanks, a figure of black and gold. His greatcoat shimmered faintly with oil and age, and his cap cast a shadow over a face carved from ice. The aquila on his chest gleamed like judgment itself. His eyes were pale, almost white, the kind that never blinked, the kind that watched for weakness. At his hip hung the weapon we all feared more than any enemy's gun, the bolt pistol of the Emperor's will, the tool of instant justice. Commander Varian stubbed out his LHO stick, straightened and saluted. "Commissar," he said evenly, his voice stripped of inflection. The rest of us stood at attention, every movement mechanical. The commissar's gaze moved from one of us to the next like a scalpel. "You are the crew of tank designation 47398, he said, his accent sharp, high-born, educated. "The Iron Resolve." "Yes, Commissar," Varian replied. "We are ready to serve. Your record shows adequate performance," he continued, pulling a data slate from his coat. 6 years of service, 4 campaigns, low crew attrition, acceptable kill ratios." The word acceptable landed like a slap. In the Guard, mediocrity was survival, but to a commissar it was sin. He studied us with something almost like amusement before sliding the slate away. "I am Commissar Drennick. I have been assigned to oversee your battalion for the upcoming operation." His tone changed then, slow and deliberate, as if savoring the weight of what he was about to say. "Your next deployment will be against a frontier world in rebellion, a heretical uprising, festering in the ashes of imperial neglect. The enemy possesses weapons capable of annihilating armor. Command projects a 73% loss rate among armored divisions." The words struck like cold water. We had seen bad odds before, but not like this. "Therefore," he continued, "to ensure unwavering faith and discipline, I am instituting a sacred oath of brotherhood. Each crew will swear before the Emperor that they will not abandon their vehicle under any circumstance. You will fight to the last breath. You will die before retreat. This vow will be recorded and witnessed. Any violation will be punished by execution." We all felt it, that tightening in the chest, the knowledge that this was not mere ceremony. Oaths in the Imperium bind more than flesh. They chain the soul. Varian stepped forward, raising his augmetic hand in salute. His voice was low but steady as he spoke. "I, Commander Varian of the Iron Resolve, swear before the Golden Throne and the Emperor of Mankind that I shall serve unto death. I shall not abandon my crew or my machine. I will fight until my last breath is spent." One by one we followed. Micros first, then Praean, his voice trembling but resolute. Kellen grunted his oath in the tongue of his homeworld. When my turn came, I stepped forward and spoke the words that would damn me. "I, Gunnar Tobin of the Iron Resolve, swear before the Golden Throne and the Emperor of Mankind that I shall serve unto death. I shall not abandon my vehicle or my brothers. I shall fight until my last breath leaves my body." The commissar smiled then. Not a human smile, but the kind that bears teeth without warmth. "Excellent," he said. "Your oaths are recorded. The Emperor will remember your devotion, as will I." Then he turned and left, the sound of his boots fading into the drone of the ship. None of us spoke for a long time. The air felt heavier. We had always known death would find us someday. But now we had invited it in, offered it tea, and sworn to never send it away. Varian lit another low stick, his hand shaking just enough for the ember to tremble. "Back to work," he muttered. The oath changes nothing, but we all knew it had. The oath had already begun its work, not as inspiration but as a curse. 6 days later, the ship's alarms blared. The drop pods were being prepped. The 47th Armored was going to war again. We sealed ourselves inside the Iron Resolve, each man to his place, the air thick with incense and fear. The descent was violent, the dropship shuddering as it tore through atmosphere, the machine spirit screaming in protest through every bolt. When the ramp finally lowered, grey light poured in like ash. The smell of promethium and decay hit us at once. Varian's voice came through the intercom, harsh and steady. "Kellen, take us out. For the Emperor." The engine roared, the treads bit the ground, and the Iron Resolve rolled into another world already dying. The dropship's ramp groaned open, and the world that greeted us was colorless, a horizon of ruin beneath a sky bruised gray with smoke. The wind howled through shattered towers, carrying with it the scent of burning promethium and old corpses. I remember the taste of the air most of all, metallic and sweet, like blood on iron. Commander Varian's voice came over the vox, clipped and calm. "Deploy. Maintain formation. Emperor's light upon you." The engine's roar filled the cabin, and the Iron Resolve lurched forward, her treads biting the ash-coated earth. The first impact of her weight against the ground sent a shiver up through the hull, the heartbeat of war resuming. We rolled down into a graveyard of civilization, the bones of a city that had long since died. Collapsed manufactorums stretched like broken ribs beneath the clouds. Every surface bore the scars of bombardment. Pitted stone, twisted metal, ruins blackened by centuries of conflict. Through the targeting scope, I saw skeletal spires leaning against one another like dying giants. Their windows burned out, their sanctums defiled. "Looks like home," Micros muttered dryly, his voice crackling through the internal vox. No one laughed. There was nothing left in us that could find humor in familiarity. The battalion moved out in columns, a steel tide cutting through grey desolation. Overhead, Valkyries screamed through the clouds, contrails streaking across the sky like the signatures of gods. Behind us came the infantry, chimeras, basilisks, lines of foot soldiers clutching lasguns and reciting prayers that fell flat against the wind. The Imperium at war, a machine devouring its own fuel in the name of eternity. Hours passed without contact, just the rhythmic grinding of treads and the distant thunder of artillery. I found myself whispering the words of the oath under my breath, as though reminding myself of its weight might make it lighter. Then came the first engagement. "Movement Sector 4, Micro said, the calm in his voice cutting through the tension. I swung the turret and peered through the scope. Shadows flickered between ruins, shapes too fast and disjointed to be regular troops. They wore patchwork armor, their bodies painted with symbols that made my eyes ache to look at directly. Cultists, Varian confirmed. Infantry, poor weapons. Let the chimeras handle them. I watched as the transports behind us opened fire, heavy bolters stitching lines of explosive death through the rubble. The cultists fell, torn apart in crimson bursts that sprayed against the grey walls. We advanced through the carnage without slowing, the treads crushing bodies into paste. The machine spirit hummed contentedly beneath my boots. Our true enemy revealed itself at dusk. It began with the death of Iron Pike, a tank 2 positions to our left. One moment its cannon was roaring beside ours, the next a streak of light cut through the air and struck its side armor. The explosion was instant, magnificent. The turret lifted clean off the hull, spinning end over end before crashing down in a ball of fire. "Anti-tank weapons," Varian barked. "Spread out now." Kellen threw the levers, and the iron resolve veered hard, treads grinding over debris. Through the scope, I caught a glimpse of the source. Figures in the ruins wielding tubes that shimmered with unnatural light, the kind that spoke of heretical technology. I fired before I could think. The shell screamed across the distance, turning the building into dust and bone. "Good hit," Varian said, but his voice carried tension now, the awareness that one mistake meant incineration. We fought for hours, pushing through the ruins as if wading through a swamp made of fire and steel. Every street was an ambush. Every shadow held a weapon. We lost 5 tanks that day. Each death echoed through the vox. A burst of static, a half scream, a prayer cut short. The 73% casualty projection no longer sounded like prediction but prophecy. We held our ground because the oath demanded it. Retreat was heresy. Fear was death. The Emperor demanded obedience, and obedience demanded the surrender of all reason. When night fell, the world turned black and red. Tracer fire cutting the darkness, burning ruins casting flickering halos. The iron resolve became a coffin of heat and noise. When the fighting finally slowed, the battalion commander's voice came through the vox, hoarse and cracking. "All units hold position. Resupply in 1 hour. Emperor watches." His voice cut out before the phrase was finished, as if even he no longer believed it. Inside the tank, the silence was suffocating. The air stank of sweat oil and ozone. Prayan sat slumped against the ammo rack, his lips moving soundlessly. Kellen's hands remained on the controls long after we stopped moving, fingers twitching, as though he feared the tank might die if he let go. Varian climbed halfway out of the hatch, smoking under a sky that looked more like ash than air. I stared through the scope at the horizon, a graveyard of burning machines, each one a monument to duty. Command's orders came again at dawn: advance, cleanse, redeem. We obeyed because obedience was all we knew. The second day was worse. The enemy had learned our tactics, their ambushes growing bolder. They struck from below this time: sewers, collapsed tunnels, sinkholes large enough to swallow a tank whole. So I saw Steel Crown vanish into one such pit, its screams echoing through the comms before the sound cut out. Kellen drove around the edge with impossible precision, his knuckles white, his breathing ragged. "Emperor, guide us," he muttered. I almost told him the Emperor was deaf, but the words died on my tongue. By the third night, the regiment was half its strength. We were surrounded by the ruins of our own machines, the earth littered with the charred bodies of guardsmen who had once believed they fought for salvation. The cultists attacked in waves, thousands of them unarmed, chanting words that bled like knives in the air. "Hold," Varian commanded. "They're testing our line." We fired until the barrel glowed, until the smell of vaporized flesh filled the turret. Still they came. The oath whispered in my skull, heavier with each shell loaded, each life ended. "Serve unto death, serve unto death, serve unto death." When the assault broke at last, dawn revealed a battlefield too quiet to feel real. The grey light spilled over wrecks and corpses, glinting on armor slick with blood. The battalion that had landed 43 tanks now counted fewer than 28. I listened to the death reports on the Vox until they became meaningless sound. Commander Varian climbed back into the cupola, eyes hollow, expression unreadable. "Command says we're winning," he said. "Says we've inflicted heavy losses. Says the Emperor is pleased." He lit another low stick, the smoke curling upward like incense from a funeral pyre. "Funny, isn't it?" he added softly. "The Emperor's always pleased, no matter how many of us die." We didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The oath hung between us like a ghost, invisible but felt, binding us in silence. I looked at the tally marks scratched into the turret wall, the 317 kills we had once worn like a badge of pride, and I realized they were graves. We were the caretakers of our own burial ground, carving names we would never know. The iron resolve groaned as its systems cooled, and I swore I could hear the machine whispering back to me, not in the tongue of the Mechanicus, but in something older, something that sounded like sorrow. By the seventh day, the world itself seemed to protest our presence. The sky pressed down like lead, the color of gunmetal smeared with ash, and the ground beneath our treads groaned as though weary of our weight. We moved through the ruins of what had once been a hive district, now little more than collapsed manufactorums and shattered hab blocks. The air shimmered with heat from perpetual bombardment, and the smell of death had grown so constant it no longer repulsed me. It was simply the background scent of existence, as familiar as oil and smoke. Command's orders remained the same: advance, cleanse, purge. There were no coordinates, no strategy, only direction and death. We reached Objective Gamma by dusk. The map said it was a manufactorum complex, but what stood before us was a charnel cathedral of metal and bone. The cultists had reshaped the ruins into grotesque shrines, the spires bent into spirals that hurt the eyes to look at. Every surface was daubed with symbols in dried blood, circles within circles, words that moved when you tried to read them. We were told to shell the site until nothing remained. "Fire," Varian ordered. My hands obeyed before my mind caught up. The battle cannon roared, and the manufactorum erupted in light and thunder. I saw bodies disintegrate through the scope. Men and women turned to ash mid-scream. For a heartbeat I felt righteous again, the illusion of purpose flickering back to life. Then the ground split open. From the fissure poured figures that should not have existed, too fast, too wrong, their limbs twisting in ways that defied human form. They were cultists, yes, but changed, their flesh marked with glowing sigils that pulsed in rhythm with the pounding in my chest. "Target the center mass!" I shouted, even though there was no center, no order, only chaos given shape. Kellen reversed the iron resolve, the tread screaming against stone as explosions bloomed across the ruins. "They're inhuman," Micros breathed, his voice barely more than static. Varian said nothing. He just kept calling targets, his augmetic hand trembling for the first time in all the years I'd served under him. We burned them all. High explosive shells, bolter fire, promethium flares, until the night turned into a single unending blaze. When silence finally fell, the ruins still glowed red like the embers of a dying forge. The air inside the tank was thick with fumes and sweat. My hands shook as I reloaded, though I wasn't cold. I realized then that I had been speaking aloud without knowing it, whispering the words of the oath over and over. I will not abandon my crew or my machine. I will fight until my last breath leaves my body. I could not stop saying it. The words felt like chains tightening around my ribs, the rhythm of the phrase syncing with my heartbeat until it wasn't mine anymore. Pren was the first to break. He started muttering during downtime, his young face gaunt and hollow, eyes darting like a trapped animal's. "They're whispering," he said one night. "In the walls, in the armor plates." We told him it was the machine spirit, the hum of the reactor, the creak of cooling metal. But later I began to hear it too, a faint whisper that came when the engines were silent, when the Vox was dead. The voice wasn't one, but many, layered like echoes, speaking in a language I couldn't recognize but understood all the same. "Serve unto death," it said. "The Emperor hears, but he does not answer. You are already his ghosts." We tried to ignore it, but the iron resolve was changing. The interior panels sweated condensation even in the cold. The auspex flickered with readings that made no sense, life signs where there should have been none, movements behind us when the hatch was sealed. Micros insisted it was interference from the cultist sorcery, that the Voxnet had been corrupted by the energies they worshipped. Varian ordered the tech priests to bless the machine, but none came. The priests had stopped answering our transmissions days ago. We were alone. The tank was our world now, and it was shrinking. When the next assault came, it wasn't like the others. The cultists didn't charge. They surrounded us in silence, their torches forming a ring of flickering light that reflected off the Iron Resolve's hull like ghosts circling prey. Through my scope, I saw them moving in unison, their lips moving without sound, hands raised in supplication. "They're praying," Pran whispered. "Praying to what?" No one answered. Then, as if on cue, every light in the tank went out. The machine died, and not mechanically, but spiritually. The hum of the reactors ceased. The fans slowed, and for one terrible moment the air was completely still. In that silence, I felt the weight of the oath more than ever, as though invisible hands were pulling us downward, binding us to our seats. Varian slammed his fist against the controls, cursing in every dialect he knew. Sparks flared, but the systems remained dead. "Reignite the core!" he shouted. Kellen's voice broke as he tried. "She won't start, Commander. She's gone cold." The whisper returned, louder now, vibrating through the hull. "The oath binds you. You will not abandon her. You will not leave. You will serve unto death." For a second I thought the tank itself had spoken. Then the lights came back. Not white, but crimson, pulsing in rhythm with something that sounded like a heartbeat. The cultists were gone. Outside, the battlefield was empty, the only movement the drifting smoke that curled like tendrils searching for purchase. Inside, the air felt thick and warm, like breathing inside a living creature. None of us spoke for a long time. Varian finally broke the silence. "Whatever this is," he said, his voice shaking, "we finished the mission. That's all that matters." But I could tell he didn't believe his own words. None of us did. That night I dreamed of the oath. Not the words, the feeling of it. The weight pressing against my chest, the heat of the metal walls, the sense of being watched by something vast and patient. When I woke, I realized the whisper hadn't stopped. It was still there, steady as the hum of a dying star. I touched the turret wall and felt it vibrate faintly beneath my fingers, like the slow breath of something asleep. For the first time I understood what Pren had meant. The tank wasn't just our prison. It was listening. And it had begun to believe in the oath too. The days that followed were not counted in hours, but in breath stolen between detonations. Time ceased to exist as it once had. The grey sun never rose or set. It only hovered somewhere beyond the smog, casting a pallid, unchanging light over everything we destroyed. The Vox was dead. Command had fallen silent. The battalion was gone, reduced to scattered pockets of survivors too broken to form coherent orders. The Iron Resolve became a drifting relic of the Emperor's wrath, moving from ruin to ruin, firing when targets appeared, and resting only when the world around us went quiet enough to hear the machine's whispers. We no longer asked why we fought. The oath had taken the place of thought. The cultists were everywhere. Sometimes we saw them, ragged silhouettes darting between ruins, their bodies painted with symbols that moved like worms under their skin. Sometimes we only heard them, their chanting carried on the wind, a sound that blended prayer and laughter into something that made the air vibrate. We tried to silence them with cannon fire, but the sound never stopped. It just changed pitch, as though mocking our efforts. I began to think that the noise came not from their throats, but from the ground itself. Kellen said once, "This planet's alive." None of us answered. We all suspected he was right. Inside the tank, the air grew thicker with every engagement. The smell of burnt propellant, blood, and fear never left us. The condensation on the walls turned dark, streaked with a residue that shimmered like oil, but tasted of copper when it dripped onto our tongues. The lights flickered between red and white, as though caught between two realities. Sometimes in the half-dark, I could see shapes forming in the mist, outlines of faces, hands pressed against the inner hull from the inside out. I stopped looking after the third time. Whatever was staring back at us wasn't human anymore. Prain's mind went first. He began to pray to the tank instead of the Emperor, whispering to it like a penitent lover. "She keeps us alive," he would murmur, caressing the metal. "She's listening. She knows the oath." Varian struck him once for speaking heresy, the sound of his augmetic hand against flesh echoing in the confined space. But later that same night, I caught Varian whispering too, his voice low and reverent, his forehead pressed against the turret wall. "Guide us," he said to the machine. "Carry us where we must go." None of us called him out for it. None of us dared. The line between faith and madness had long since been buried beneath ash. The iron resolve began to act on her own. Her systems powered up without command, the turret shifting toward unseen targets, the Vox crackling with distorted fragments of voices that no longer belonged to command. Once, during a lull, Kellen stepped out of his driver's harness to stretch his legs. The engine roared to life unbidden, the treads grinding forward before anyone touched the controls. "She doesn't like being left alone," Micros said with a dry laugh. It was the first time he'd spoken in hours. Kellen climbed back into his seat without a word and didn't leave it again. The next engagement came in the ruins of a cathedral that had been twisted into a fortress by the cultists. The stained glass windows were long gone, replaced by rusted metal, and human skin stretched taut over the frames. A statue of the Emperor still stood at the entrance, but its face had been carved away, leaving a smooth void. We didn't wait for orders. We didn't need them. The oath was enough. I fired the cannon until the recoil bruised my shoulder and the barrel glowed orange. The shells tore through walls, bodies, and idols alike. Each impact felt like absolution. Not divine forgiveness, but something purer, crueler. The release of fury without pretense. When it was over, the cathedral was gone, reduced to rubble and smoke. We sat in the tank in silence, surrounded by the echoes of our own violence. The air inside shimmered with heat, and the brass icons of the Emperor we'd fastened above the control panel had melted into shapeless blobs. "Do you feel it?" Micros asked suddenly. His voice was too calm. "We're fulfilling it, the oath. It's feeding her." He looked at the wall as if expecting it to answer. I followed his gaze and saw the faint outline of a handprint glowing red on the interior plating. It was my hand size at my shape, but I hadn't touched the wall in hours. That night the machine spoke, not in words we could hear with our ears, but in pulses that throbbed through the hull and into our bones. It wasn't sound, and it was rhythm. Serve, endure, burn. The message came again and again, vibrating through the air like a heartbeat that had replaced our own. The lights flickered in unison with it, the entire interior pulsing red. Prain began to weep, his voice breaking into laughter halfway through. Varian looked at me, his single remaining eye bloodshot, the other a ruined mess of scar tissue. "This is what he wanted," he said. "The Emperor, he wanted this. We're his tools, his fuel." I almost told him he was wrong, that the Emperor had nothing to do with this guy, but the words refused to come. Deep down I knew he was right in one terrible way. We were fuel. Faith was the match. When morning came, if it was morning when we found the cultists gone. No bodies, no movement, just an eerie silence that blanketed the world. We might have been the last living things left. The Iron Resolve idled quietly, her engine humming like a beast that had fed well. The crimson lights faded back to dull amber, and for a moment I thought I saw steam rising from the interior walls, like the slow exhale of a sleeping giant. I touched the metal and felt warmth beneath it, not the mechanical heat of an engine, but something organic like the pulse of living flesh. Kellen died that day. The tank's machine spirit, or whatever had replaced it, decided it no longer needed him. A burst of pressure from the control column snapped his neck mid-maneuver, quick and clean. His body slumped forward against the dashboard, the smell of burnt circuitry mingling with that of cooked meat. Varian didn't order his body removed. None of us did. We left him where he fell, the oath whispering louder now. You will not abandon your brothers. You will not abandon your machine. The iron resolve kept moving, guided by no one we could name. I no longer knew if my hands controlled the firing stud, or if the tank merely allowed me to believe they did. That night, I dreamt I was part of the machine. My body was steel and smoke, my veins filled with coolant, my eyes replaced with the gun's sight. I fired endlessly, my shells screaming prayers in a tongue that tasted like iron and blood. When I woke, I could still feel the vibration of the cannon beneath my ribs. I think I smiled. We stopped pretending we were fighting for victory. By then, there was no command structure, no coherent front, only isolated pockets of tanks crawling through the ruins of a world already dead. The Vox channels were a graveyard of static, broken by the occasional scream or prayer that ended mid-sentence. The sky had turned a permanent red-gray. The light of a dying sun filtered through centuries of dust and ash. We drove without destination because movement was all we understood. The iron resolve no longer needed orders. She moved as if guided by instinct, seeking battle like a starving beast hunts for flesh. I had stopped asking where we were going. The oath was enough. Varian spoke less with each passing day. His voice, once so firm, had become a rasping whisper that bled into the hum of the engine. His human eye was clouded with infection, his augmetic hand twitching in rhythm with the tank's heartbeat. Micros barely slept, though none of us did anymore. His hands were covered in old burns from the Vox system, but he refused to stop adjusting it, claiming he could hear something beneath the static, a voice giving him direction. When I asked what it said, he only smiled and said, "It tells me where to aim." I stopped asking after that. The days, or what passed for them, blurred together. We crossed the desolation of the hive's outer wastes, where the ground was a mosaic of cracked ferrocrete and human bones. The wind keened across the open plains, carrying the faint rattle of chain links that might have been ghosts or might have been us. Occasionally we would find the wreckage of other tanks, burned-out hulks that still smoldered despite the cold. Some bore the same markings as ours. Others had been twisted by something unnatural, melted from within, their hulls warped like soft wax. Each time we passed one, I felt the iron resolve shudder faintly beneath me, as though recognizing a fallen kin. It was near one of those wrecks that Prion finally broke beyond repair. We had stopped for what passed as rest, the engine idling in low hum. Without warning, he began clawing at the hatch, screaming that he could hear the Emperor calling him, telling him to flee the machine. Varian tried to stop him, but Prion was young and fast, and desperation lent him strength. He unsealed the hatch, and the cold came roaring in, carrying the stink of death. He made it halfway out before the turret rotated on its own. The heavy stubber fired once. A single clean shot. His headless body slumped against the hull, the rest of him still inside. The smell of burnt flesh filled the cabin. None of us spoke. We didn't even move his body. The oath didn't allow it. By then I had stopped feeling fear. It wasn't courage, just exhaustion. The kind that seeps into your marrow until even terror seems like a luxury. I remember looking at Prayon's corpse and thinking it looked almost peaceful, as though death had been a kind of mercy. Varian muttered a prayer, but the words came out hollow. "The Emperor forgives," he said, though his voice trembled. The tank's lights flickered red for a heartbeat, and I swear I heard a low, almost amused whisper vibrate through the hull. "No, he does not." The next battle found us in the heart of the city's corpse, where towers leaned against each other like drunks in prayer. The cultists were waiting, thousands of them, pouring out of the ruins like ants from a cracked nest. Their weapons glowed with sickly light, their chants rising above the roar of our cannon. "Target anything that moves," Varian shouted. I obeyed without hesitation. The cannon's recoil slammed against my chest again and again until every bone in my body ached. Each shell tore through dozens, hundreds, but still they came. The ground itself burned beneath our treads, and the smoke was so thick it turned day to dusk. The Iron Resolve took hits, dozens of them, but none penetrated deep enough to stop her. It was as if the tank refused to die. Then Micros was hit. A shard of shrapnel tore through his faceplate, embedding itself deep in his skull. He didn't fall immediately. He just sat there, blood leaking from the wound, smiling faintly. "It's fine," he whispered. "I hear them now." His hands moved on their own, adjusting the Vox one last time before collapsing forward. The static changed. It was no longer random. It was rhythmic, pulsing like a chant. The same 3 words over and over, buried beneath the noise. "Serve unto death, Varian and I were the last." The Iron Resolve was limping now, her left tread half melted, her hull scarred with molten gouges. Every system screamed warnings, but still we pushed forward. Ahead lay the heart of the city, a temple built of bone and steel, crowned by a spire of light that pierced the clouds. I don't know if it was real or hallucination. The tank's auspex showed nothing but static. The closer we came, the louder the whisper became, until it drowned out everything else. I no longer heard the engine or the shells or Varian's voice, only the oath now spoken by 1,000 unseen tongues. "You will not abandon your machine. You will not abandon your brothers. You will fight until your last breath leaves your body." When the shell hit, I barely felt it. There was a blinding flash, a rush of heat, and then silence. For a moment I thought we had died. Then I opened my eyes and nothing had changed. The tank was still moving, though the world outside was a sea of fire. Varian was slumped against the control panel, his chest torn open, the augmetic hand still clutching the Vox lever. I reached for him, but when I touched his shoulder, the flesh came away like ash. The hull glowed red-hot around me. The air was molten. I should have burned. I should have died. But instead I felt my heartbeat slow until it matched the pulse of the machine. The pain vanished, replaced by something cold and vast. The Iron Resolve was breathing. Death came, but it didn't end anything. I awoke to silence. No light, no movement, only the faint hum of power through metal. My hands were fused to the controls, my skin gone, replaced by cables and steel. My eyes no longer blinked. They saw through the scope permanently, the world now reduced to coordinates and heat signatures. I realized what I had become long before they opened the hatch. The tech priests found us weeks later, after the bombardment. They took our bodies, what was left of them, and called it recovery. They did not burn us. They repurposed us. Now I am still here, entombed within another tank. My consciousness is bound to the gunner's systems. My mind a fragment of machine code and memory. I fire when ordered. I kill when told. The living crew think I am just a servitor, another obedient cog in the war engine. They speak above me, laugh, pray, eat, and I listen. I envy them their ignorance. Sometimes in the still moments between battles, I hear other tanks on the comms, faint whispers beneath the signal noise, voices that sound familiar. I think one of them is Varian. Another might be Micros. We speak without words, only pulses of static that carry meaning no human can translate. We are still serving, still obeying, still fighting. The oath was fulfilled. The oath is eternal. Death was not the end. It was the transition. We are the Emperor's wrath given permanence, flesh recycled into obedience, faith turned into circuitry. The Iron Resolve still breathes, though her name may have changed 100 times since that world burned. And somewhere deep within her hull, my thoughts echo endlessly against the walls. I will not abandon my machine. I will not abandon my brothers. I will fight until my last breath leaves my body. I was Gunner Tobin of the Iron Resolve. I swore an oath unto death, and death obeyed.